Chapter 22. Scar. Scar did his best to keep his expression neutral, but inside he was roiling. He could not possibly have heard Nala correctly. It was incomprehensible. "You say that you and Simba spoke of going to Garamba?" Scar asked her. She nodded, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "We talked about it all the time. We would listen to the animals around the waterhole that had just returned from there, and they always made it seem so magical, especially the Blue Grotto. It sounded so different from Pride Rock. We wanted to see what made it so special. We promised each other that we would go there one day." "But it does not make sense, Miss Nala," Zazu said. "If Simba survived that stampede, why would he not return to Pride Rock? I do not care how much he wanted to see this grotto. He would have known that everyone would be worried about him, especially Queen Sarabi." Scar gritted his teeth. He had warned Zazu about referring to Sarabi as their queen. "I don't know why," Nala said. "There must be a reason he didn't return. Something important." "Yes, something like his uncle telling Simba that his pride would blame him for their king's death if he ever showed his face at Pride Rock again." Scar found himself in an unfamiliar state, feeling both worried and confused. He didn't like it. He much preferred being in control of what was happening around him, but Nala's revelations made him feel the opposite of in control. Could he trust what the cub was saying? And what was this about Rafiki? Scar had not heard a word from that one since his brother's death. Mufasa's trusted advisor had not even pretended that he would stick around and serve Scar once he took over as leader of the Pride. But Scar could not deny that there was something remarkably uncanny about the Madril's visions. Rafiki had predicted Simba's birth before Sarabi even knew she was carrying Mufasa's heir in her womb. The warnings he had given the Pride over the years had saved them from enemy invasions, devastating storms, and more. If something about Simba had recently appeared to Rafiki, Scar could not dismiss it out of paw. He may not like the Madril, but he respected his abilities. But Rafiki had to be wrong this time. Simba could not be alive. Yes, the cub had somehow managed to escape the hooves of those wildebeests, but Scar had succeeded his hyenas on him with specific instructions to kill the brat. Shinzi had assured him that Simba was dead. Unless... Scar stood up straight. Something prickled at the back of his neck. It was the same feeling he got whenever Simba was mentioned around the hyenas. They would get nervous, and Shinji would always find a way to change the subject. Scar saw red. Blood red. Heat pulsed through his body as his heart began to pound within his chest. Those mangy fools had lied to him about taking care of Simba all those months ago. That was the only explanation. Sire, are you okay?" Zazu asked. "You are looking somewhat unwell." Scar sucked in a deep breath. He needed to calm down. It was the only way he would be able to think clearly. "I am just trying to make sense of all this," Scar said as he began to pace back and forth along the spongy jungle floor. "This is a lot to take in." Or maybe it wasn't. He could not be too hasty here. There was a high probability that Nala was mistaken. She was nothing but a cub, one who missed her best friend. She wanted all these puzzle pieces to fit together because she wanted to believe that Simba was still alive, but that didn't mean it was true. As for Rafiki, well, who knew if that old monkey even had all his marbles, or if the mongoose who delivered news of Rafiki's vision was accurate in his reporting. If his nephew was still alive, there was no way he would have stayed away from his mother all these months. Simba would have made his way back to Pride Rock, one way or another. Scar recalled the words he'd spoken to him outside the gorge. "Run away, Simba. Run. Run away and never return." Would Simba have truly taken that warning to heart if he had survived? It was possible, but unlikely. And if he did, he would not stay away forever. Nala, I am sure you want to believe that Simba is still alive, Scar said. But you really think he would have made it to Karamba on his own? I made it part way there on my own, she pointed out. Scar was amused by her pluckiness. Should he remind her that those macaques had nearly ripped her apart? Remembering how close Nala had come to meeting her demise made Scar even more doubtful that Simba would have reached that jungle on his own. He was getting himself worked up over nothing. Well, Nala, perhaps my nephew was not as brave as you are, Scar told her. He was still a young cub when that stampede had happened. She shook her head. No, you're wrong. Simba is the bravest cub I know. I know he made it to Garamba. But Miss Nala, if you suspected Simba was in Garamba, why did you not share this news with Queen Sarabi? Zazu asked. She deserved to know. Because if I told her, she would have stopped me from going to search for Simba myself. I want to be the one who finds him, she said. You want to be the hero, Scar surmised. Of course she did. Didn't she? Didn't everyone? No, that's not it, Nala said. I want to find him so that I can make up for letting him go to the gorge on his own that day. Her voice broke as she choked out the words. She sniffed and dropped her head. Then in a small voice, Nala continued. Simba asked me to join him the day he went to the gorge, but we had just got in trouble for sneaking away to the elephant graveyard, and I was afraid we would get caught again. Or that Zazu would rat us out, she said, shooting the bird a mean look. I was only doing my job, Zazu protested. Nala didn't address Zazu. Instead, she continued, I just keep thinking that maybe if I had gone with Simba like he'd asked me to, I could have talked him out of going down to the gorge, and then King Mufasa wouldn't have had to rescue him, and they would both still be here. She hiccuped on the last word, her head hanging so low it nearly touched the ground. Oh, Miss Nala, Zazu said. Have you been blaming yourself for what happened this entire time? She had. It was more than obvious to Scar. Poor little fool, taking the blame for something he had done. Scar suddenly realized that his heart was not made completely of stone. He actually felt sorry for Nala. Well, he almost felt sorry for her. Wonder! Thank you. Nala's misplaced blame was not his concern at the moment. His concern was his nephew and the possibility that he was not, in fact, dead. The nephew that, if he was alive, would threaten Scar's place as ruler of their pride. Scar was stymied by a perplexing bound of indecisiveness. Could he trust the word of a guilt-ridden cub who had just spent the last 10 minutes dangling from the arm of a wild macaque? Could he afford not to? He immediately knew the answer to that question. He could not leave anything to chance, especially something as important as Simba possibly returning to Pride Rock. Just the thought of what would happen if Mufasa's spawn ever came near their home again sent a shiver down Scar's spine. He would tell the Pride everything about that day at the gorge. Scar knew his sister-in-law well enough to know that it would not take much for Sarabi to put the pieces of the puzzle together. She just had to think about who had the most to gain if both Mufasa and Simba were no longer here. Are you sure about this, Nala? Scar asked. She nodded. Yes, Simba is in Garamba. I can feel it. And if he is not? Scar asked. She dropped her head again and pushed at a pebble with her grimy paw. If he is not there, that means he isn't anywhere. But I have to be sure, she quickly added. That is why I must continue my journey. If I don't, then I will always wonder. So would he. Scar knew he wouldn't rest easy until he went to Caramba and saw for himself that Simba was not there and that he had never been there. Okay, Scar said. Nala's head shot up. She looked at him, her little eyes filled with hope. Okay? Okay? Zazu screeched. Sire, you cannot be serious. He was deadly serious. If he only had Nala's word to go on, Scar probably wouldn't bother. But he could not discount Rafiki's vision. It changed everything. If there was even the slightest possibility that Simba was still alive, he must find him and eliminate him. Of course I am serious, Scar said to his majordomo. You heard what Nala said. Simba has always had plans to go to Garamba. But sire, you cannot think. Silence, Zazu, Scar warned. If you do not think it is worth searching for Simba, you could go back home. How could you say such a thing? Zazu sputtered, flapping his wings indignantly. There is nothing I want more than to find young Simba alive and well. And that, Scar realized, was exactly why Scar would have to kill him, along with Simba and Nala. The way he saw it, there was only one solution to securing his position as the true king of Pride Rock. He would have to make certain there was no possible way Mufasa's heir could ever usurp what Scar had already claimed as his own, and guarantee that any witnesses would not bring word back to his pride of what he had done. He should have taken care of this himself from the very beginning, instead of entrusting such an important job to those hyenas. He would have to rethink their place in his kingdom when he returned home as well. But he would worry about the hyenas later. Right now, his sole focus was to uncover if there was any truth to Nala's assertions. Scar assessed her. She was pretty banged up, but at least she no longer appeared to be near fainting. He wondered if he should just get rid of both Nala and Zazu now. No. Nala would be the perfect distraction for Simba. His nephew would be so preoccupied with his best friend that he wouldn't see Scar's attack. Once he found and eliminated Simba, Scar knew he would have to come up with a plausible story that would explain how all in their party had perished but for him. It would be a hard sell, but he would figure out a way to do it. He must. He lowered his head so that he could look Nala in the eyes. This will be a treacherous journey to find Simba. Are you sure about this, Nala? Yes, she said. Then it is settled, Scar said. We are continuing on to Garamba, and I shall go back to Pride Rock to inform Sarabi of these new developments, Zazu said. You shall do no such thing, Scar said. He reached up and snatched the bird before he could fly off. He would take pleasure in finally ridding himself of his majordomo. But sire, why not? Zazu asked. Because Sarabi does not need to know. But he is her son. Surely I don't care what he is, he snapped. Scar caught Nala's reaction out of the corner of his eye. She jerked back and her eyes narrowed with a hint of distrust. He quickly regained his composure. He could not allow Nala to suspect that he had anything but Simba's best interests at heart. Think of what it would do to Sarabi if it turns out the mongoose provided faulty information, he said, his demeanor more composed. Do you really want to put her through such agony a second time? Oh no, I would never want to cause Queen Sarabi more pain. I didn't think so, Scar said. You will continue on with us. I need you to fly ahead and assess the path for any dangers. Scar looked back at Nala. There are a multitude of ways to reach Garamba. Why did you decide to take this particular route? Because Simba and I were told to follow the bull-shaped stars, she answered. Ah, she was following Taurus. She was certainly a smart one, wasn't she? He would have to remember that as they made their way through this land. Fortunately, he did not have to rely on the stars to guide him to Garamba. A quick jaunt through the Otsi forest and around Mount K should get them there by nightfall. I know an even shorter route. Come, Nala, let us go find my dear nephew.